Good morning, gang. Happy Saturday morning. War is hell, right? We've all heard that. We all hear the stories of what's going on in the Middle East and how does it affect us? It's going to. There's no question. And I'm not talking about yesterday's Day of Rage, which apparently had a little bit to do in Europe, but I didn't really see much more than protests here in the United States. So, which is a good thing. But let's look at where this can go forward. You're hearing all the stories about, war crimes and all this. War is hell, right? It ain't, it's not something I recommend. Don't put it on your bucket list as I want to participate in one, okay? Ask anybody who's ever been in any sort of combat situation. They wish they weren't there, okay? I don't care if you're some mercenary or guerrilla or whatever. You'd much rather be sitting at home drinking a cup of coffee, talking to your kids and your spouse than you are shooting at people, unless you got a major screw loose, basically meaning you're a terrorist. But you look at what's going on. You have people all over the world claiming Israel's committing war crimes. Now, I'll agree that there are some extremely questionable acts, especially one that I saw this morning about Israel using white phosphorus bombs. Okay, that ain't cool. However, anybody who's blaming Israel on this is higher than a kite. Israel didn't go into Gaza and start beheading people and shooting kids in front of their parents. That wasn't how this started. Goes back to the old saying, never start a fight, always finish one. Kudos to Israel for going in and trying to finish this. But let's look a little bit about that and how you are going to prepare for that, if you will. Hamas set up their headquarters in a hospital. You don't bomb hospitals. You don't attack hospitals, right? Big red cross on something. No, that's off limits. Hey, that's a good place. That's a war crime. You can't do that. Okay, that's against Geneva Conventions. You do not set up military operations in a hospital. Okay. Hamas their original plan was to target elementary schools, little kids. Okay, that was their plan. That's where they were going to start this whole thing. That's a war crime. Okay. And however you want to say it, well, Hamas didn't declare war. Israel declared war, so therefore the Geneva Conventions don't apply. Okay. Just keep splitting hairs. No matter how you slice this, the onus for starting this war is completely on Hamas. 100% the end. Argue with me all you want. I don't care. But so now you look at the response around the world, what's going on. Iran is supposedly sending troops towards Israel through Syria. Egypt is refusing the Palestinians to come across the border. The Republicans in the United States put up a bill yesterday to prevent anybody with a Palestinian passport to be allowed entry into the United States, okay? Because we don't need another one of these great settlements like we had under Obama, where all of a sudden half the population of Somalia wound up in Minneapolis. That got us Ilhan Omar. Okay? We don't need to be importing terrorism. No offense. We got enough here already that we have to worry about. They may not be walking down the street with AK-47 shooting up in the air and grenades strapped to their belt or anything, but we've got enough terrorists here in the United States. And no, I'm not just talking about Democrats, okay, which, Democrat and terrorism go hand in hand. I mean, hell, they're supporting the Hamas in this whole thing. I mean, on paper, we support Israel. Go through the financials and see where Democrat organizations have been sending money into Palestine. Look at the protests, look at the positions that liberal organizations are taking. I mean, University of Washington, Harvard, those uber liberal institutions are screaming about their support for Palestine. Okay. But you bring in the next liberal organization, and what is that? That's the terrorism we have to worry about. And that's financial. That's the way you crush the United States. Militarily, it's not going to be easy for any country to do it. They'd have to come through Canada, they'd have to come through Mexico, neither of which are exactly what you'd call very conservative countries. However, it ain't going to be easy to get through either one of them into the United States. So the way you crush the U.S. is economically. And again, this goes right back into Democrat/terrorist, because we all know what Joe is trying to do to destroy the economy. I mean, we added $500 billion in debt, because we're now at 33.5, guys, if you haven't noticed, in 25 days. It took less than a month to add $500 billion. If you extrapolate this all out, Greg Manarino came out yesterday and did the math. We will add $1 trillion to the national debt every 45 days. Every 6 months, every 6 weeks, we will be adding $1 trillion to the debt. Start thinking about how that goes. You talk about the power of compounding when you're saving money. Oh, if you put $1,000 a week and it's earning interest over time, rule of 72, well, this sort of stuff. In 10 years, you don't have 120,000. You've got, 300 or whatever because of the compounding interest. That works on debt too. Okay. So now that interest rates are higher, our debt is compounding faster and faster and faster, and we are getting further and further and further in debt. So let's take a look at our banking system, which we've talked about quite often, and what kind of chaos that is. Anybody notice this? In the first week of October, how many banks closed? I'm not talking about go out of business. I'm talking about closing bank branches. Bank of America shut down 21 in a week. Wells Fargo shut down 15 in a week. In total, in the first week of October, 54 bank branches across the country were shut down. Okay. So far this year, we've had 3,000 bank branches shut down. Why do companies close places? Let's take Kmart, take JCPenney, take Sears, whatever, companies that have basically gone bankrupt over the years. And what did they do? The company started struggling. They started closing locations. Remember what I told you many times. The two biggest expenses any business has are their employees and their facilities. That's it. It's not, the biggest expense for General Motors is not the inventory of cars. The biggest expense for General Motors is its employees and its factories and office buildings, et cetera, et cetera. So these banks are slowly getting rid of the properties. Now, somebody could come up and say, well, a lot of them were in California and people are leaving California in droves. So what does the bank need to have people, bank branch there? Agree. However, those people are going somewhere. So if they all left California and went to Texas, why hasn't Wells Fargo closed California branches and opened up new ones in Texas? They haven't. Okay. So there's your issue. People could say, oh, well, everybody's doing online banking, or, sure, that's been around for 20 years. Okay? It's not a new phenomenon that's going on. The banking industry is in trouble. Talk about the commercial real estate markets. Commercial real estate market is collapsing. Banks are heavily involved in commercial real estate loans. If those all default, banks are in trouble. Y'all know the price of real estate and the insurance or mortgage rates right now. Banks aren't getting a whole lot of new business to cover for it. They're in trouble, which means our economy is in trouble. When you have credit card debt at an all-time high and all of a sudden consumer spending is down, why? Because people have already run out of the savings they had. Now they've maxed out the credit cards they have. There's nowhere else to get money to spend. Okay? And a lot of us have tightened our belts, huh? I don't think y'all can realize or acknowledge that's what's going on. We've all tightened our belts as well. Fortunately for us, we had contingency plans for things like getting food, or we have a pantry, or we have the soap and the shampoo that we bought 3 years ago, so we don't need to get it again. We're not going, honey, crap, we're out of laundry detergent. What do we do? You've got some. We thought ahead. Where are you thinking ahead in the financial situation? Because that's the war. Ultimately, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are going to try to dominate the world market. Is it going to happen quick? No, like I told everybody when that thing in August, it's like, no, a new BRICS currency wasn't coming out August 22nd. Okay. But it's still in the plans. This is something that happens. It takes a while to do it. China is all in on taking over the world. They have their own globalist idea. It's nothing like Klaus Schwab's. It's nothing like Joe Biden's. China's idea is everybody worships at the altar of Xi Jinping. The Muslims' idea is everybody worships the Prophet Muhammad. Klaus Schwab is everybody worships him and King Charles and Bill Gates and the cast of clowns. Okay. The people have to have a contingency plan because every one of them will fail. Okay. China's the one that has the most realistic chance, if you will, because this will be a two-front war that we deal with. The Islamic Revolution, the only war they can bring to you is physical, okay, violence. They can't really do anything economic to anybody. And before anybody says oil, no, Hamas doesn't, and Hezbollah don't control a lot of oil, okay? Don't control any. So, no, they can't do anything about it. You could talk about Klaus Schwab. Well, the only thing Klaus Schwab can do is economic, because there's not a whole lot of military force that the World Economic Forum has. So unless those two paired up, so we have the Islamic Revolution World Economic Forum, yeah, that's going to go over real well. Ultimately, they are not the threat. China, however, can do both. They can destroy whatever they need to, take over whatever they need to by force, at least. No problem. Okay. Go through Africa. China's already trying to do that. Okay. Economically, then they can take over Europe. They can take over the United States, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the things to prepare for. War is hell, but it's not the way we predict, what we expect. It's not watching Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan or something. That's not the war you and I are probably going to participate in on a global scale. On a domestic scale, that's probably the war we're going to wind up in. You need to be prepared for both. You need to be trained to the best of your ability for any sort of physical combat. And you need to be trained mentally to the best of your ability for every economic impact. Now, you look at what happened yesterday. Gold was up $60 an ounce. Silver was up like 80 cents an ounce. Those are big moves for both of them, about 3% for both of them. They're both still a long way off from their recent highs. More expensive this week than it was last week? Yep. Okay. Is it still the best place to have your money? Yep. Because no matter what happens, the 4 Bs are still your most important thing to have. Beans, bullets, Band-Aids, and bullion. Keep collecting all of them. Go out.